Welcome back to Cruising America. This week we're touring the Saxton-McKinley House in Canton, Ohio. We're Steve and Kathleen. We're Cruising America in our 35-foot fifth wheel RV, chasing 70-degree weather year-round. If you'd like to watch our previous videos, please click the Cruising America playlist link in the description below this video. Otherwise, enjoy our current episode starting now. We spent a week visiting Cuyahoga National Park in northern Ohio this September. While there, we also visited the National First Ladies Library and Museum in Canton. If you're interested in that video, please see the link in the description below. To schedule a tour, call or go to the National First Ladies Library and Museum. Also, the Saxton-McKinley House tour starts inside the National First Ladies Library and Museum. Don't go directly to the Saxton-McKinley House for your tour. However, free parking is available next to the Saxton-McKinley House. From there, walk one block east to the museum. The museum has summer and off-season hours, so be sure to check their website for the applicable open times. Aside from being a beautiful Victorian building, the Saxton-McKinley House is the last remaining home with direct ties to Ida and William McKinley in their hometown of Canton, Ohio. Ida Saxton-McKinley was born and raised in the home, and it remained in her family until 1919. The remainder of this video is the tour of the Saxton-McKinley House, narrated by a park ranger.
The birthplace and family home of our local First Lady, Ida Saxton-McKinley. And then she, of course, will be the wife and acting First Lady to our 25th President, William McKinley. And his portrait's over here for you, if you have any need to put names and faces together. And if you do have any presidential questions as we go throughout the tour, please let me know. But I always like to say this is not the McKinley National Historic Site, right? So our goal here at First Ladies is to tell the lives and the legacies of all of our First Ladies. But while we're in this house, we're going to talk a bit more about Ida and what really goes on to take the role of the First Lady. Does that sound okay with you folks? Yeah. Wonderful. And then before we get too much into Ida's history, I do like to give a little bit of background about the Saxton House itself. So this home was originally built in the 1840s by Ida's maternal grandparents, and it was expanded to its current size in the 1870s. So I always like to say we're standing in the new edition, right? The 1870 portion of the home. And then that acted as a space for the family for multiple generations, right? So Ida lived here with her grandparents, and then also her nieces and nephews. And that was maintained as a multi-generational home up until about the 1920s, which is when we estimate that this picture was taken. At that point, your great nieces and nephews, right? They don't want grandma's old Victorian house. And so the home is sold. And so from the 20s until the late 1970s, the Saxton House became a split-use rental property. This is the kind of reaction I'm looking for. Right, so it's not great, right? And I'll show you this other picture. This is the same side view of the house that we saw walking in today. So you can see the porches are ripped off. This extra brick facade is added. This first floor was completely gutted. It had been turned into a restaurant and a dive bar for a really long time. And then I know it's hard to read, but that little sign there on the corner says, ask about weekly and monthly rates, because the upper floors of the house were converted into boarding house spaces. So at this point, by the time we get to the late 70s, Canton is going through a pretty big urban renewal period, very similar to like Akron and Cleveland at this time. And so the house is originally slated for demolition, right? It's this nice corner lot on Market Avenue, and given what it looks like here, we're not surprised, right? And so at that point, you have one of Ida's great nephews. He's now older and involved in local politics, right? He sees basically like the wrecking ball in the parking lot. And he's like, wait, that's actually a really important house, right? My great aunt and the president used to come and stay here. And so he'll repurchase the home, and he is the one responsible for a lot of the exterior restoration that we saw in the house. He ends up getting the house put on the National Register, and that passes in 1985. And then our nonprofit partner, the National First Ladies Library and Museum, they're responsible for this wonderful interior restoration that we're going to experience today. So they reopened the home to the public in 1998. Former First Lady Rosalynn Carter came for a ribbon cutting. It's quite the to-do right out here on the Saxton porch. And then the house was designated a unit of the National Park Service in October of 2000. So we are celebrating our 25th birthday this year of sharing the Saxton-McKinley story. Now, because of everything that happened, right, between point A and point B, there aren't a ton of original materials, right, like floors, woodwork, wallpaper, that kind of thing here in the home. But the original artifacts that were donated back, I'll be sure to try to point those out along the way.
So these doors weren't original?
Not the ones that we see here on the first floor. There are some original pieces of architecture in the second and the third floor. So you'll see some original doorways, some original doors that actually have been patched for where there were like mail slots and extra key slots as, you know, boarding house spaces. And then we'll also see some of the original plaster work upstairs as well. The Saxtons originally had this beautiful curved plaster work throughout the whole home. So here on the first floor, it's a lot of sharp edges. We need to try to imagine like this like curved woodwork, very similar to like the staircase here, right? Like soft edges versus these really sharp geometric shapes.
Do you know the architect?
The architect for the home, I don't, unfortunately. I know that when they expanded the house in the 70s, it did take about 2 years for the addition to be completed. And it did sort of seamlessly blend both portions of the house, right? So it's not like that back portion was kept separate. But I'd have to double check on that architect for you.
And how many rooms originally?
So it's hard to say. I think at this point, we estimate about 14 to 15, like total rooms though. So not just bedrooms, but it also includes formal parlors, sitting parlors, right? Some staff bedrooms, or that kind of thing. All right, wonderful. Oh, go ahead.
When they did the renovation, did they try to mimic wallpaper and finishes and things that might have been here at the time the McKinleys were here?
They tried based off of some of the evidence that existed, right? There weren't a lot of physical wallpapers left. I will say this paper that we see here in the foyer and what continues up the stairwell is the closest to an original wallpaper that we have. We know that the Saxtons purchased a William Morris wallpaper that had what was supposed to be tulips and chrysanthemums on it. So of his papers that are still reprinted, this was like the best approximation to what they had. And then there are some photographs that we'll see in the home where you can see they did sort of a one-to-one replica, but I don't think they're exactly the same. Oh, folks, I did forget to mention, you are more than welcome to take photos. We just ask that you don't use flash as you go throughout the home. All right, so as much as we adore modern technology, this elevator takes up a big old hunk of this room. So if we pretend like that's not here, right, this family parlor would have been a lot bigger, right? It could have accommodated a family like the Saxtons. And in Ida's case, growing up here in the home, her family in the house would have consisted of her father, whose picture's here above the fireplace, James Saxton. Over here to my left, we have this oval painting. This is Ida's mother, Catherine DeWalt Saxton. Her parents, right, they're also living here in the house. We got a set of grandparents living here in the home. And then on the oval photograph here on the elevator wall, we have the Saxton children. So from left to right, it's the future First Lady, her sister Mary, and then their baby brother George.
Were they considered a wealthy family?
Yes, yeah. Ida's dad at one point ends up becoming the second wealthiest person in Stark County during his lifetime. Each of her grandparents were business owners, and then her father ends up being the founder of the Stark County Bank here in town. So we can say that Ida is definitely living a life of privilege in this era, but she also is afforded a lot of fairly modern opportunities that we don't see other women get the experience to have. Ida's father was pretty progressive for the time. He's a very vehement abolitionist here in Northeast Ohio. He also advocated for the education of all of his children equally, including his daughters. He'll end up sending them as far as they can go through college. And that's in addition to, right, what was expected of a lady at that time, finishing schools, etiquette courses, right, that kind of ladies' education. Off of the strong evidence versus having something that's historic, even also that's well. Now this library space, of course, would have also acted as an entertainment space here in the house, right, without TV or radio. But you can kind of imagine both of these rooms being occupied by the family. And I always like to envision little Ida and her siblings running around, right? They're playing cards and marbles and also getting to do their homework and do their reading and writing and that as well. But as far as some original pieces for these spaces go, the freestanding bookcases that we see here in the library were donated back by some members of the family, as well as almost all the photographs and portraits that we see in these two rooms. Those are also going to be original. The green light fixture there in the family parlor is the closest thing that we have to an original light fixture. When the home was being restored, the then curator actually found this fixture at like a flea market in Florida, and it is like the same exact make and model that the Saxtons purchased from the Cleveland Lighting Company. So
Glass is slightly different.
I'm like almost convinced it's just like pure luck, right? It could be the original, it could not be, but it was restored, right? The tassels and like were added back on. But you can see how very, very similar it is to the photograph that's there. So the house actually didn't get electricity added to it during the family's lifetime. It was all based off of a gas well lighting here in the home. That could have been, the lack of modernization of the house could have been part of the great grandkids issues, right? I don't know for certain, but it was, at least in Ida's lifetime and that next generation, all gas lighting here in the home.
What was the time period again?
Yeah, so Ida's born in 1847, so that's that older portion of the home. And then, did I say 19? I'm sorry, okay.
No, you said 18.
Okay, and then.
She's astounded.
These first ladies cover so many years, I didn't know. So. And then this newer portion, right, so 1870. So the house has really been restored to as early as 1870, and there are some pieces as late as the turn of the century, so about 1900.
Thank you.
There's a replica of that
Yep, over
at
in the visitor center.
Yeah. And when were the McKinleys, when were they in office?
So that inauguration would have been in 97, and then a re-inauguration. Well, welcome everybody to the formal parlor. So for honored guests, right, such as yourselves to the Saxton House, had you come to visit the family during their lifetime, you really would not have seen that whole first section of the home, right? That's a private family space. For you folks as guests, you would have been greeted here in the main foyer, very similar to how we started our tour today. And then you would have been ushered here into the formal parlor. Now, because this was a public room, right, this is where the most money is spent. And so the Saxtons are going to try to show off that wealth and status that they have. And that's oftentimes done through the details of a room, right? We've got very beautiful furniture. Very nice paintings and pictures in the room. And then even things like wallpaper. The more wallpaper you had, traditionally, the more well off you were. So this room does feature 18 different prints of paper, from the alternating medallions under the cherry all the way up and through the ceiling papers.
I didn't know that. We bought a house that had one room and it had 5 wallpapers.
So there you go, you're getting up there.
No, I got rid of it.
No.
I couldn't stand it. It hurt my eyes.
I get that. I think this is a good example of ones that have been blended nicely. Sometimes it's a bit jarring.
There was one in a parade of homes.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
they did everything all elaborate.
I gotcha, yeah.
He's colorblind. It didn't bother
And then for Ida, right, if we're thinking about her as the eldest daughter of the family, we got another photograph of her here above the fireplace. She's about 24 in that photo. This is a room she also would have been comfortable in because she would have been expected to serve as a lady of this house, right? She's a hostess alongside her mother and her grandmother. And so we're going to see her perfect those skills well before the White House years, right? Ida's hosting teas and events and balls up in the 3rd floor ballroom, right? She is a socialite here in the city of Canton. And then a lady of the house has to provide entertainment for her guests. So Ida's instrument of choice was the piano. That piece is an original. It was donated back to us by the Presidential Library here in town. And then, as sort of like a culmination of all of Ida's education, she was fortunate enough to get to go on a grand tour of Europe with her sister in 1870. If you folks have never heard of the grand tour before, basically it's like a very fancy study abroad. So it's something traditionally reserved for Victorian gentlemen, right? They finish college, and then they go and see all the great places of the classical world and the Renaissance, right? Experience other cultures. And so if George got to do something, so did Ida and Mary. And the girls went together on a chaperoned trip. So much to Ida's dismay, she wanted the same level of freedom as her brother, but that was not afforded to her. And she goes through some fun experiences, right? You'll see in this picture of Ida here, she's got her ears pierced. That happened while she was abroad. She also talks about like drinking wine in French cafes and having amazing food. But she also writes home about the poverty that she's witnessing in the European countrysides, all of the physical labor that's being forced on older women, and all of the child abuse that's happening in the industrial cities, right? And these are things that she had not experienced here in Canton, right? We can imagine in a house like this, Ida had a pretty sheltered lifestyle. And so when she comes back home, we see her take on this new philosophy of philanthropy, and that'll come up more as we talk about her First Lady cause as well. But as like a souvenir from their trip abroad, the music box that you folks see here, thank you very much, was purchased in Geneva, Switzerland as a thank you gift to their parents.
Oh, nice.
I think it's better than one of those shirts, right? Like my kid got this t-shirt.
Oh, come on, it would have been a hand-painted shirt
Yeah.
back then.
My kids went to Europe, I got this t-shirt.
Yep, exactly. Alrighty, folks.
Wow,
Now,
that's
the
exciting.
next portion of the tour is going to be going up to the 3rd floor, what had been the Saxton's Grand Ballroom, but eventually becomes Ida and William's apartment here in the house. right? So in addition to a hoop skirt like this, Ida is going to be expected to be corseted by around the age of 4. And then when she's pregnant, she's going to be expected to wear a corset, right? These are the times where doctors are advertising cosmetic surgeries to remove lower ribs, right? The tiny waist is the way to go. And although the limitations of a garment like this one, right, say like the hoop skirt, they will make way for things that are a bit more flexible. We have the half hoop, right? So just to give you a little bit extra on the back, but
We all need
Bustle?
like that sort of half bustle, and then there's pads that go on top if you want even more volume in the back. But not only are you seeing changes like this, it's allowing women a lot more mobility, right? Hoop skirts were causing deaths upon deaths for women in that era, right? Imagine wearing something like this, you're trying to cook around a fire, you're tripping or getting caught in things, right? It's a pretty big safety hazard. This, at least, you only have to worry about the backside of it, and you have more mobility in your legs.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. If you're not a subscriber yet, please subscribe to our channel by clicking the subscribe button below, then click the bell to receive an instant message each time we publish more videos.